Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
If John was beaten up and attacked in that house, who did it?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And it's not for us to know. Somebody other than Karen is responsible for that, for the killing of John.
Yeah. Roberta in the truth zone, mic hitting raw. Spotlight shining, she exposing the flaw. Debunking the myth, breaking their facade. This is Glass City, respect the squad. On these NYC blocks where the skyline flex big. Roberta Glass slicing lies with a truth rig. Innocence frosters, your stories unravel. She's a map through the madness of gritty gravel. Glass don't bend and facts don't break. She's a storm that's called, you feel the quake. Exposing tales stitched with crooked seams. Justice in the lens, shattered fake dreams. Screams about killers, painted heroes in disguise. She burning propaganda with fire in her eyes. No glamour for the guilty, she call it straight. She backs victims, the voice stay awake. Stats and receipts, no spin, no clutter. Cold cases whisper, she cuts through the mutter. Truth's her tempo, don't confuse the beat. She's standing for the real while you taking a seat. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time to play. She's glass hard, break the false and save the day. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time.
Okay. How is everybody? Hello, Maestro. Thank you for moderating. It's just us chickens, huh? Hello, Truth and Justice. Hello, Dean Walker. Hello, Myrna. Nice to see everybody. Let me reflect. So I wanted to talk about Paul O'Keefe's testimony, the testimony we didn't hear in the second trial. And if we hopefully we'll have time for it, is to compare it to Peggy O'Keefe's testimony and see if it was this a good substitute. So it seems like Paul O'Keefe was left on the cutting room floor, his testimony, in favor for Peggy O'Keefe's testimony, which was much shorter. So I think we just get into it and see if there were things that were left out that really should have not been left out. If it was a good move, was it a good substitution? Let's look at it. You know, they have been made public enemy number one by Karen Reed, who's done everything to demean and attack the O'Keefe family. I was just listening to an interview with Daddy Reed, and he says he's going to call Michael Morrissey, the DA, and tell him to call off the trial. It's such an abomination. You guys, you can see if I can pull that up in a break. We'll look at that together. And I wondered if some of his outrageous behavior that we've been hearing about, certainly it's been rumored, it's been kept behind closed doors. The courtroom has been cleared out. But afterwards it happens. It seems to be people are pointing the finger at him and his behavior and the team Reed's behavior in the courtroom. And are they trying to disrupt the court so much out of frustration that things aren't going the way? Or is it a different kind of strategy? I don't know. You tell me. All right, so let's look at Paul O'Keefe's testimony. We're starting in the beginning here.
And where did you grow up?
Braintree, Massachusetts.
And what are your parents' names?
My father is John, mother is Margaret.
And did you have any siblings?
Two, yes. My sister Kristen. And excuse me, brother John.
I mean, what a burden to be the last one left of your siblings. What a horror. And have to testify in this trial. I mean, this is really, I mean, the fact that Karen Reed didn't take a plea deal, but it's always about themselves, is that she didn't consider the O'Keefe's feelings and having to put them through this kind of re-victimization. They have to go through in a trial.
And what was sort of the order and age as far as the siblings?
My sister was the oldest. My brother was the middle. I'm the youngest. So my sister was 5 years older than me, and my brother was 3.5 years older than me.
And do you work, sir?
I do.
What do you do for work?
I'm in sales for a company, Simmons Industries, which is a manufacturer of plumbing products.
How long have you been doing that?
12 years now.
Does your wife work as well?
She does.
What does she do?
She's in marketing. She works for a mechanical contractor out of Randolph.
And about how long has she been doing that?
She's been with her company for a year and a half now. Before that, she had a job working out of Boston for about 13 years.
And your brother, John. Did you call him John, or was there other, like a nickname or anything else that you referred to him?
I mean, we all called him Johnny, especially if you're family.
And what did Johnny do for you?
Boston Police.
How long was he a member of the Boston Police?
16 years.
And within the Boston Police, where specifically did he sort of work?
He started in Hyde Park, Mattapan area, which I believe is E18, and transferred over to Dorchester, which is C11, and then downtown Boston in the SOAR unit, which is the sex offender registry unit.
And when was it about that he started with the sex offender registry?
So after my sister had passed away in 2013, her husband passed away 2 months after that. My brother, he took on responsibility of raising our niece and nephew. And so the Boston Police, to ensure that he was safe and protected, moved him to that unit in 2014.
And I'm sorry to ask you this, but your sister passed away in 2013, is that correct?
Correct.
And what did your sister Kristen pass away?
She had an aggressive brain tumor, which is called glioblastoma.
And about how much time was it between the time that she sort of received the diagnosis and her passing?
5.5 months.
And you mentioned that you had a brother-in-law, Kristen's husband, is that correct?
Correct. Stephen Furbush, yes.
And when was it that he passed in relation to?
2 months later, which was January 12th, 2014.
And by they, I mean Kristen and Stephen Furbush, they had two children, is that correct?
Yes, 2 children, Kaylee and Patrick.
Which one is old?
Kaylee's the older. Patrick's a couple years younger than her, about 3 years.
How old are they now?
Kaylee is 16 and Patrick is 13.
And you mentioned, so initially when your sister Kristen passed away, what was sort of the family's plan as far as Kaylee and Patrick were concerned?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. So initially when your sister Kristen passed away and her husband Stephen was still alive, what was sort of the initial plan as far as with reference to the children?
We were kind of in scramble mode to figure out, how we were going to move forward. My wife and I had talked about having the kids come live with us. We had 2 small children at the time. 3 and 8 months were my children. We didn't have a large enough house to take on 2 other children, so my brother stepped in, moved into the house in Canton, and raised them for 8 years.
And so around this time of 2013, your sister Kristen and her husband Stephen's children, about how old were they at this time that Johnny sort of took over?
Kaylee was 6, Patrick was 3.
Now, when your brother Johnny what if any sort of legal relationship did he have to your niece and nephew, Kaylee and Patrick?
He was made a legal guardian.
And where did he move from, and where did he move to when he assumed that role?
So he was living in Dorchester in a condo. He was living by himself, so he pretty much moved into my sister and brother-in-law's house in Canton. Lived there for, I want to say, 4 years until sold the house and bought a different house, which is also located in Canton.
Now, the initial house that your sister Kristen and her husband Stephen lived in with Kaylee and Patrick, about how long had they been living there before your brother John moved in?
They were probably there for 5 or 6 years.
Prior to that, where had your sister Kristen and either of the children lived prior to moving into that house?
Yeah, so Kristen and Steve actually moved in with Johnny in Dorchester when Kaylee was just a baby. Lived with him for approximately a year before they bought their home in Canton.
Now, you mentioned that at some point your brother bought a second house in Canton, moved in there with the kids. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, around what time was that?
I want to say 2017 or 2018 timeframe.
And they lived there up and through sort of January 28th, 29th of 2022. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, around that particular time of January 2022, about how often did you see your brother Johnny and kids, Kaylee and Pat?
I would say probably every other week, twice a month.
And your brother in particular, how often would you communicate with him during that time?
Communicate regularly, mostly through text messaging, a couple days a week, I would say.
Now, over the course of time, you said about 8 years or so that Johnny had sort of custody of Kaylee and Patrick, correct?
Correct.
And over that course of time, about how many relationships and well, let me phrase this question first. About how many long-term relationships did your brother Johnny have with women over the course of that time? And before you get to that, if I could just ask you what your definition of long-term relationship is.
Long-term relationship is, over a year.
And so how many of those types of dating relationships that lasted for at least a year did your brother have during that time that he had kids? 2. And who were those 2 individuals?
Amy Fortney and Karen Reed.
And this other individual, Amy, when about was it that your brother dated her?
2016, 2017 timeframe, I think.
And did this other woman that he dated named Amy, did she have children of her own?
Yeah, she had 2 sons.
Now, you mentioned 2, so other than Amy, who was the other one?
Her 2 sons' names are Gabriel and Christian.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In reference to, you mentioned 2 women that your brother had dated for a long-term period, correct?
Yes, correct.
And one of them was the woman Amy that you were just speaking about, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And who was the second one?
Karen Reed.
And is Karen Reed someone that you had met through the course of your brother dating her?
Yes.
Just clear for the record, do you see Miss Reed in the courtroom today? Could you identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's
Yep, she is seated right there between Mr. Giannetti and Mr. Jackson.
Does the record reflect identification of the defendant by the way?
No objection. Yes.
Now, Mr. O'Keefe, when was it that you first met Karen?
I believe it was Mother's Day, so maybe May of 2020.
Now, prior to that, were you aware of any other time when Miss Reed and your brother Johnny had dated in the past?
They dated very briefly in 2004.
And had you had occasion to meet her during that brief period where they dated in 2004?
I did not meet her back then, no.
And so the first time you met her would have been sometime in the spring of 2020, correct?
Correct.
And what was your understanding as far as when they had reconnected or gotten back together in reference to when you met her?
They reconnected. I believe my brother reached out to her in March of 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. I think he reached out to her via Facebook Messenger and then, text.
And they resumed some kind of relationship, and you had occasion to meet or see Karen Reed over the course of hanging out with your brother at various occasions, correct?
Correct, yep.
Now, about how often would you see Miss Reed? Would it be the same, more or less than when you saw your brother?
Almost the same, maybe a little less. If my brother was just, it was just him and I or his friends, but for the most part, he was with Karen.
And as far as your understanding, what was sort of the living arrangements with regard to Miss Reed and your brother?
She has her own home in Mansfield, Massachusetts. She would stay at my brother's house in Canton, I would say 3, maybe 4 nights a week.
Right. It sounds like all the time, but she didn't have much stuff there. I mean, it didn't take her long to remove her stuff. And what I always find so touching is that when John O'Keefe started caring for the kids, he took a sort of a less dangerous job in the SO. department. So that he would be there for the kids. And little did he know the danger was in his own home. Psychopathic killer, Karen Reed.
And that would be at your brother's house with both he and your niece and nephew.
Correct.
Now, with regard to, you mentioned that they reconnected sometime around the COVID-19 pandemic. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And with regard to your brother and the defendant, Ms. Reed, and the children, what was sort of going on as far as school and work with regard to the pandemic, with regard to each individual?
So that was a period of time when schools were closed and kids had to do remote learning. So Kelly and Patrick were both at home, remote learning, and my brother, didn't have a job where he can work remote, so he had to go into the office. And most of the time, Karen would be at home with the kids during the day while she worked remotely.
Now, you mentioned earlier that your brother had a legal guardianship role with regard to the children, correct?
Correct, yes.
What, if any, legal status or role did the defendant have with regard to the children?
She didn't have any.
Now, with regard to your brother and the defendant's relationship, what, if any, conversations did you have with your brother in regard to status of their relationship or any issues in their relationship?
He didn't say too much. If they were arguing, he might, give reference that they were arguing. Didn't really tell me what they were arguing about, but mostly kept that stuff to himself.
What, if anything, did he mention to you as far as reasons for an argument or sort of points of contention?
He didn't like, if she would spend a lot of money on the kids for gifts, or, I know there was some arguments over, what she.
I mean, that almost helps Karen Reed, doesn't it? That testimony. She was too good to the kids, right? He wouldn't just spend less money on the kids, but really, I mean, you would think that what John O'Keefe objected to was manipulating the kids with money and stuff. That's what I would think, because according to the oldest girl child, that Karen Reed ran hot and cold. I mean, anything to, and that it was like they were walking on eggshells around her. So anything to try to, I think that some of the frustration with the kids is that she couldn't control them. Especially the older girl child. She was apparently closer with the younger boy child. She used them to manipulate John, certainly. I mean, listen, she said in her excuse to get back in the house and get the murder vehicle and get her stuff was that she wanted to see the kids. And then when she saw the kids, she didn't say two words to them. It was just they were just a means to an end. And you can hear in her text messages with Brian Higgins how much she really resents the children and resents children in general.
She fed them, whether it's, Dunkin' Donuts or whatnot, but it was things along those lines.
Now, what, if any, what if any occasions, as far as they're arguing or anything like that, did you observe personally yourself?
Yeah, I witnessed. So they had rented a house down in Cape Cod. That was summer of 2021. I brought my two daughters down for a couple nights, and I witnessed, one intense fight between the two of them.
And as far as the fight, as you're characterizing that, was that anything physical or just verbal?
No, it was a verbal argument.
And what, if anything, was that verbal argument about?
It's hard to recall. I mean, I guess like typical couples fighting. There was alcohol had been involved. I recall her complaining that he wasn't nice to her, or something to that effect. And I was kind of the referee in that entire situation.
Now, when you make reference to alcohol involved, is that one or both? Or?
Both.
both your brother and the defendant.
Correct.
Now, if I could turn your attention to New Year's, and specifically New Year's Eve going from 2021 into 2022. Do you recall that time?
I do.
And do you recall where you and your family were for that sort of New Year's celebration?
Yeah, so I was with my wife and her family. We went to Aruba the day after Christmas in celebration of my wife's mother's 70th birthday.
One sec for the siren.
Mr. Lally, does it make sense that I give an instruction at this point?
Um,
I'm going to see counsel at sidebar.
Let's move past this. Good time for a break. This is the interview with Karen's father that I was talking about. That he doesn't think it's good. The fact that this expert didn't update his LinkedIn profile, he thinks is outrageous, and he thinks that the whole trial needs to be shut down, and it's a persecution of his daughter. Talk about outrageous.
you must have a lot. You're an educator.
Well, you certainly don't misrepresent your academic credentials, particularly when you're an expert. I'll start with that. And I don't know where to go from there. It's just what this state is doing, this persecution of Karen Reed and this collection of actors, witnesses, is just disgraceful. Disgraceful. I'm going to call upon Michael Marcie to stop this charade. Do the honorable thing. Because of what we've
Charade. This sounds like a good word for Karen Reed's innocence fraud campaign. The campaign that you've helped craft and push, Daddy Reed.
seen in this courtroom over the last 4+ weeks now. This is an expert witness today. Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah, has a little temper problem. Gonna say good night before his temper gets best of him. I thought that was outrageous. All right, now we're back from sidebar. We're watching. If you're just tuning in, we're watching Paul O'Keefe's testimony. We're gonna compare it to Peggy O'Keefe's testimony. See if this was a better, more effective testimony to have Peggy testify than Paul O'Keefe. Paul O'Keefe's testimony wasn't heard by this jury. Meaning the retrial jury. Trial number 2 jury.
For your wife's mother's 70th birthday, correct?
Correct.
And was your brother, Johnny, was he also in Aruba around that same time frame?
Yes.
And your resort and your brother's resort, where were they in relation to each other?
They were pretty much on opposite sides of the island.
And at any point in time when you were in Aruba, did you see your brother at any point?
Unfortunately, we did not.
Now, you mentioned that you were there with your wife and your children. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And do you know who your brother was in Aruba with around that same time?
He was with Karen Reed and brought the kids. So Kaylee and Patrick were with him. They were also with a large group, many other couples and families.
You know who was sort of the primary organizer of that group that your brother was with?
Yes, a friend of ours, Laura Sullivan.
And how did you know Laura Sullivan?
I knew Laura through my brother. She had dated my brother's partner and one of his best friends, Pat Rogers.
And did Miss Sullivan and Mr. Rogers have a child together?
Yes, and a boy.
And at some point, did Mr. Rogers pass away?
Yes.
What was sort of the relationship between your brother and Miss Sullivan in relation to Miss Rogers' child?
Johnny was, so she has a son, Benjamin, who Johnny is godfather to.
And sort of towards the end of your stay in Aruba, with regard to the pandemic, what, if anything, happened to you or any other member of the family?
So my older daughter tested positive for COVID. So her and I kind of got left behind, stayed for an extra 3-4 days, I believe.
So after you returned from Aruba, at some point, were you and your brother trying to make plans to connect or to hang out or see each other at some point in January 2022?
Yes, we were actually planning on getting together on January 29th.
And do you recall what day of the week that was?
That was Saturday.
And why was it Saturday? Why were you sort of targeting Saturday as a viewpoint?
Weekend, no work. Kids didn't really have much on the schedule.
By that, you mean your kids as well as
Correct.
nephew?
Yes.
And then what, if anything, occurred with reference to those plans as far as them coming to fruition or not?
A big snowstorm hit the area, and we said, maybe it's probably better if we just stay home and off the roads. So we kind of canceled getting together the day before.
So initially had a meeting for the 29th, but canceled it the day before on the 28th.
Correct.
So this snowstorm that you were talking about that was coming in, is that something that you and your brother were aware of prior to that day it happened?
Yes.
And was that something you learned of? Where did you learn about that?
The news.
So sort of all over the news, is that fair to say?
Correct. Yes.
And as far as did either your children or John's children, for lack of a better term, niece and nephew, were there any sort of planned activities for that day that got canceled because of the weather or no?
On that Saturday, the 29th, I think everything was pretty much canceled. I don't know anything specific. We had, my daughters had basketball on Friday night, the night before, but we didn't really have any plans for the children on Saturday.
Now, turning your attention to that day of the 28th, so the day before that was a Friday, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And you mentioned that your daughters had basketball that evening, is that correct?
Correct.
And what, if any, role do you have in regard to your daughter's basketball?
I coached both of their teams.
And so you coached 2 games that Friday night?
Correct.
And about what time do you know that did you sort of get home from all of that?
First game was at 6, second game was at 7:15, so we got home 8:30ish.
And your wife was with you at both of your daughter's games?
Correct. And
when you got home, the snow that had been predicted, had it started at that point where you were?
I noticed the first flurries sometime between 10:30 and 11 p.m.
And if you know, approximately what time did you go to bed then?
Right around probably midnight.
And your wife, Erin, did she go to bed same time as you?
I think she went to bed a little before me, yes.
Now, earlier in that day, that Friday, the 28th, what, if any, conversation by any means did you have with your brother John?
My last communication with him was on a group text exchange that included myself, Karen Reed, and my mother. And he was excited because our niece Kaylee had gotten accepted to Bishop Fee in high school. So he was happy, proud dad moment. And then Patrick's national math scores came back, and he scored extremely high. So he was extremely proud of Patrick that day as well.
So we had sort of sent your brother John, sort of sent that to the group, which included yourself, your mother, and Miss Reed.
Correct.
And your niece Kaylee, as far as what grade was she in, and what grade was she going into as far as that application to?
Yeah, so she was 8th grade going into 9th, freshman year in high school.
Now you go to bed at some point in the evening of the 28th, and you woke up on the 29th. Do you recall what woke you up on that morning?
Yes, my mother called me at 6:40 a.m.
Is that something typical?
No. She called and just said, something happened to your brother. They found him in the snow, and they took him to the hospital.
And which hospital was it?
Good Samaritan in Brockton, Massachusetts.
And at that point, did you, or what, if any, other sort of information did you have as to what had happened to you?
I really didn't know much until I got to the hospital. While I was at the hospital, my cousin works 911 dispatch, so she came down because she had heard. And the only thing I was able to get was that, he was cold and they needed to warm him up. But didn't have much information other than that.
So you get that information from your cousin when you get to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
What a nightmare. Nightmare. I mean, that's what you get from both Peggy O'Keefe's testimony and Paul O'Keefe's, that Karen Reed has put them through a nightmare.
That cousin, what was her name?
Susanna Hensley.
If I could take you back to just prior. So you initially get the phone call from your mother, Peggy O'Keefe, is that correct?
Correct.
That's about 6:40 in the morning.
Correct.
And your wife Erin is with you at that time, is that correct?
Correct.
And so you get that call, and sort of what is it that you do, or sort of how quickly are you out the door?
I jumped out of bed, got changed, brushed my teeth, and I was out the door.
And you drove from your house to where?
Yes, I drove myself from my house to the hospital, Good Samaritan Hospital.
And what kind of car did you have at that point, if you know?
A Toyota 4Runner.
That's a SUV?
That's an SUV, yes.
What color was that?
Black.
And as far as the road conditions, visibility, sort of when you're driving from West Bridgewater to Brockton, what, if anything, did you observe as far as how the roads were?
Driving was very poor that morning, and just continued to get worse throughout the day. So it took me longer than usual, than it typically would to drive that distance.
Now, as far as your parents were concerned, did they come to the Good Samaritan Hospital as well?
Yes, our friend Kerry Roberts picked them up in Braintree and brought them to the hospital in Brockton.
When you say your friend Kerry Roberts, how do you know Kerry Roberts?
So we grew up in Braintree. She grew up in Braintree as well. 2 years older than me. Knew my brother. They went to homecoming together one year. And she also resides in Canton.
So she was someone who had grown up with you and your brother, was friends with you, and also friends with your brother, correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as your arrival at the Good Samaritan, who arrived first? Was it you, your parents, or something else?
I got there first.
And about how long was it, if you know, between the time that you got there and the time that your parents arrived there with the brothers?
Probably about 45 minutes.
And when you arrived at the Good Samaritan Medical Center, where within the facility did you sort of go?
Emergency room waiting area, lobby.
And at some point, did you, after your parents arrived, did you move from the waiting room area to somewhere else within the hospital?
So when my parents arrived, they brought us, in the double doors into like a little family sitting room.
And about how long was it that you were in the family sitting room before you went somewhere else?
So we were in that waiting room. Doctor and nurse came in and told us that all their efforts to save my brother were unsuccessful and that he had passed away. And then asked if we wanted to go see him, in which we said yes. So we left that room and walked down the hallway to his hospital room.
And that doctor you spoke to, do you recall what the doctor's name was?
Dr. Rice.
And when you say that we went down to the room where your brother was that everyone in the group?
It was myself and my parents, yes.
And Ms. Roberts, did she go as well? Or did she
No, she stayed out in the waiting area.
And as you were making your way down to the room where they had your brother, what if anything occurred along the way?
So I noticed Karen Reed was there. She was being restrained by hospital employees, and she was, screaming out to us, asking if he was alive.
Is that something that she screamed out once, more than once, or something else?
Several times.
And Peggy O'Keefe testifies, Karen Reed said, is he dead? Is he dead, Peg? Is he dead? And she goes, what's she doing here? So, I think the difference in these two is that Paul O'Keefe seemed like he was fooled by Karen Reed. And he asked, what did you do? And he said, I blew her a kiss. And spoiler alert, that's coming up. And Peggy O'Keefe was like, what's she doing here? Not like, what's Karen Reed doing here? I mean, just the distancing language, right? What's that one doing here? It's like, oh, she's getting, and just the way she says it, she's getting psych evaluated. Yeah, she's nuts. You just could hear the contempt. And Paul O'Keefe was like, I just thought she was great for the kids and great for the family, my brother, and, very different testimony. And you wonder how much of this campaign, you have to remember at the time of this first trial, now the buffer zone has been dropped. Another crazy decision by Judge Canoni. Some higher court was like, maybe you should reconsider. And she's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Get rid of the buffer zone. That was my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong from the article I read about it. She's just let this trial turn into a kangaroo court. And she was being honored this weekend for Person of the Year in Norwood, Mass. I mean, revolting. So, I mean, you have to remember, so as this testimony is going on, there's Free Karen readers outside yelling, could be yelling, Free Karen Reed, so much pressure. I mean, they had worked the public into an absolute frenzy. It's still at somewhat of a frenzy level. I think it's died down slightly. But I mean, this is when Free Karen Reed was at its height. They were fooling a lot of people with this nonsense.
Now, at some point, you went into the room where your brother was, correct?
Correct.
And can you describe to the jury sort of what you saw as far as your brother was concerned?
I mean, he was
Okay, see, I see a lot of questions in the chat. Judge Cannoni was being honored. Hold on one second. Let me make sure I'm getting this correct. It's from some Bar Association of Massachusetts. Let me make sure I'm getting it correct. As Person of the Year on the long weekend. I thought it was Thursday. It was Wednesday, excuse me. Wednesday, May 21st. It was at the 4 Point Sheridan. It was from the Bar Association of Norfolk County. And they held it at the Sheridan, 4 Points Sheridan. They named her Honorable Beverly J. Cannoni as Person of the Year. Walter F. Timilty, Clerk of Courts, was the keynote speaker. Pro Bono Awards, Richard S. Fagone was given the Pro Bono Awards. So some awards given by the Bar Association of Norfolk County. Judge Cannoni, Person of the Year, Wednesday, 21st. That's when that happened.
pretty banged up. He had his eyes had swelled up. He had a breathing tube in, a mask anyway. Blood come down his nose, blood come down his mouth. But what really stood out to me was, the eyes. It was almost as if like there were ping pong balls under his eyelids. They were that swollen.
Now, in addition,
And so Karen Reed took this description, and David Yannetti said, well, Paul O'Keefe said, and this is David Yannetti saying, that it looked like he, or no, he didn't say Paul, he just said it looked like he went 4 rounds with Tyson or whatever, so many rounds with Mike Tyson. And they've attributed this to Paul O'Keefe. He's never said it. It's something that David Yannetti made up. So here it is, the Bar Association. Here's the Person of the Year, Beverly Cannoni. Unreal, right? To get rewarded by the way that she's run this court. I mean, she makes Judge Ito look extremely competent and in control of his courtroom.
in addition to what you observed as far as his eyes, what, if any, other sort of injuries did you observe on any other part of your brother's body?
I noticed some markings on his arm. Didn't look at his lower torso area at all because he was covered by a sheet. So most of the injuries that we observed was to the head area and face area.
And when you say his arm, do you recall whether that was one arm, both arms, or which arm in particular?
He had markings on his right arm. I didn't notice anything on the other side.
And you spent some time privately as a family with your brother. At some point you left, is that correct?
Yes, I would estimate we were probably in the room with him for probably 20 minutes until we left.
And after about that 20 minutes, you come back out to the hallway, and where are you going?
We went back to the waiting area, trying to figure out, can we leave? Do we leave? So yes, we left. My mother drove with me. My father drove with Kerry Roberts. We went from the hospital at Good Samaritan in Brockton back to my brother's house in Canton.
And if I could just take you back for a moment. So as you exit the room where your brother is and you come back out in the hallway, what, if anything, occurred at that point?
Again, we saw Karen Reed being restrained by hospital employees, screaming the same things. Is he alive? Is he alive? Is he alive?
You, at any point, either before or after, respond to any of that screaming that you heard from the defendant?
I actually blew her a kiss.
Now, as far as your relationship with the defendant, Ms. Reed, prior to January 29th, 2022. How would you characterize it?
I thought we had a good relationship. I held her in very high regard. I thought she was a good influence on my niece and nephew. I appreciated all the help that she was providing to my brother with the kids. We'd go out together as couples a couple times. She became very friendly with my wife, but I'd say overall we had a good relationship.
As far as those positive feelings that you had in relation.
So Paul O'Keefe's wife, Erin, also testified at this trial and did not testify at the second trial, this retrial.
To the defendant prior to January 29th, 2022. Had you expressed those to either the defendant or any member of her family?
Yes. So Christmas Eve of 2021 was the first time I met her parents. My brother hosted Christmas Eve at his house. I met Mr. and Mrs. Reed. I offered to help Mrs. Reed carry some things in from her car. And as we were walking to the car, I said, I just want to tell you, I think your daughter's great. I think very appreciative of what she's done for the kids and helping my brother.
Now, turning back to that day of January 29th, you go back out to the waiting area, is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, happened? What did you see or speak to when you got out there?
I saw her father, Bill Reed, come into the hospital. He was picking up Karen as we were pretty much exiting the hospital to head back to Canton.
And did you have any conversation with him?
I did not.
Now, you indicated that you drove with your mother back to Meadows Ave where your brother lived, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Roberts drove with your father back to the same location, is that correct?
That is correct.
And as far as your understanding.
So that was William Reed's, Daddy Reed's, as I call him. Please hit the thumbs up, guys. His first opportunity to give his condolences. He was so offended that his behavior was put under the, called into question. You'll hear, spoiler alert, when she goes back to see, and Karen Reed goes back, the whole family goes back, meaning Daddy Reed, Nathan Reed, and Karen Reed go back to retrieve the murder vehicle and her stuff and do, we don't know what. I mean, this is always the time that people have thought that she might have gotten rid of the Ring camera evidence, but she could have had access to the app. She could have been, probably was an approved user of the Ring camera video and could have deleted it via app at any time. In the back of a police car, anytime. I thought we were going to hear from the Ring. There was a motion. I don't know what became of that about the Ring camera evidence. I keep hearing that Welsher is the last witness, but maybe not. Maybe we'll hear from someone from the Ring, or maybe Judge Cannoni's thrown it out. I don't know. There was a motion to allow that. Did anyone see what happened to that motion or hear?
Standing sort of on the drive back, where were the kids? Where was Kaylee and Patrick back?
So Kaylee was picked up by Mike Camerano, who's Kaylee's best friend's father. Patrick was at a sleepover the night before, so he was still with the family at the house where he slept the night before.
And you mentioned that the drive from your house from West Bridgewater to Brockton was somewhat difficult, correct?
Very difficult.
How would you characterize the drive from Brockton to your brother's house in Canton?
I mean, at one point I said to my mother, I don't know if we're going to make it back. Visibility was terrible. Couldn't see the roads. We made it back. It was just a very, very difficult. Probably the worst driving conditions I've driven in as far as weather.
And so then at some point, you and your vehicle, Ms. Roberts, and hers and your parents, you arrived at your brother's house in Canton, correct?
That's correct.
Know about what time of day that was?
It was mid-morning, so maybe between 10 and 11 o'clock in the morning.
And was there anybody present at the house when you arrived there?
No.
And at some point, did other people come over, as far as specifically I'm asking about children?
Yes, so Kaylee was dropped off shortly after we arrived. And then a little while after that, Patrick was dropped off. from his sleepover.
And at some point, you were tasked with informing the children what happened to your brother, correct?
Correct.
At some point after you left the hospital in Brockton, what, if any, conversation or what, if any, phone calls did you receive in relation to the defendant, Ms. Reed?
Karen Reed called me, asked me if it was okay to come over and to see the kids, and I said sure.
And do you know how long that phone call went on for?
It was a quick phone call, maybe a minute. Like I said, she just asked if she could come over, and I said sure. And then she arrived at the house, shortly thereafter.
When you initially arrived at the house, along with your parents and Ms. Roberts in her vehicle, what, if any, other vehicles did you observe sort of in the driveway at that time?
I only noticed, I think, my brother's car. I mean, I don't even recall seeing any other cars. I mean, there could have been a car in the garage, but I didn't notice really. Nothing stands out.
What kind of car did your brother have?
Chevy Traverse.
What color was that, if you know?
Like spray.
And if you recall, when you first sort of arrived there, where was that vehicle parked in relation to the front?
I believe it was the right side of the driveway, all the way down at the end of the drive, like the top of the driveway.
Now, you had the phone call with the defendant. You indicate it's fine for her to come over. You know about how long it was after receiving that phone call and when Ms. Reed arrived there?
20 to 30 minutes, maybe.
And when she arrived at your brother's house, who, if anyone, was she with?
She was with her father.
And at some point, was there anyone else from her family that came over the house that morning?
Her brother and his wife showed up shortly after she arrived with her father, yes.
And how many cars, if you know, come in between sort of the...
They each took separate vehicles, so 2 cars arrived.
And Ms. Reed's vehicle, do you know where that vehicle was in relation to your brother's house at that time?
It was either in the driveway or in the garage. I'm not positive.
So fair to say it was at the house, correct?
It was at the house, yes.
So between the Reed family, there's 3 vehicles at your brother's house, correct?
Correct.
Now, the defendant, you mentioned that you had met her father before on Christmas Eve, is that right?
Correct.
That you met her brother or brother's wife prior to that day?
No.
And you were in the house when they arrived, is that correct?
When Karen and her father arrived, I was shoveling the walkway out front.
And in total, about how much time was the defendant at the house that morning when she came in?
I would probably say about 30 minutes.
And at that point, when the defendant arrived, was...
So I have to correct myself. I've been saying 15 minutes. This is my poor math. It really was 30 minutes, and he was correct. It was about 30 minutes that they were at the house. So, correction.
Either Kaylee or Patrick or both home at that time?
Yes. Kaylee had come home first, and then Patrick had come home. So I think Patrick may have come home while they were there.
And you mentioned when they arrived, you were out shoveling sort of the front walk, correct?
Yes.
And when they arrived, did you go in the house with them, or did you continue shoveling or something else?
I continued shoveling for a very short period of time, and went in the house pretty much right after they did.
And when you got in the house, what was it sort of that you were doing at that time?
I mean, we had just told Kaylee what had happened, and we were waiting for Patrick to get home, so we were kind of just congregated in the kitchen.
When you say we, who exactly are you talking
Sorry, myself, my mother, my father.
about? Was Miss Roberts still there, or is she gone home?
I don't recall.
And so, in addition to yourself, your mother, and your father, Miss Reed, her father, any other sort of members of her family, where were they within the house at that time?
So mainly the kitchen at first. When Patrick came home, we kind of took him to the side room where the kids hang out. Talked to him in that room, and then we were in the kitchen. Then Miss Reed and her father went upstairs.
And when you sat down with Patrick to tell him what had happened to your brother, who, if anyone else, was with you at that point?
Karen Reed.
And at some point subsequent to that, you went back to the kitchen, correct?
Yes.
And where was it that the defendant and her father went?
Upstairs, into the bedroom.
And if you know, about how long were they in the upstairs area of the house?
I would say 10 to 15 minutes.
And
Really? There was no cup of coffee? William Reed, there was no talking about the floors. There's no conversation about the flooring. Odd and odd that William Reed mentioned a plumber and he knew how to act. Do I need to play that interview again? Unreal interview? Right, maybe. He's like, I know how to act. I consoled them and they were crying and hugging Karen. I mean, absurd.
Them as they came down the stairs?
Yeah, so I was on the phone a few times. So I didn't watch them walk upstairs, but I saw them come downstairs, turn the corner at the bottom of the stairs. She had some of her belongings that she had taken from the bedroom.
And where did she go with those belongings?
They left. Like I said, they were probably there for 30 minutes. They got in their cars and drove back to Dighton, Massachusetts.
And when you say got back in their cars, you mentioned 3 cars that had been there in the driveway or in the area of the house, correct?
Correct.
When the defendant left, how many of those cars remained?
0.
And as far as the weather conditions that you had mentioned that existed at the time that you drove from the hospital in Brockton to your brother's home in Canton, if any improvement occurred with the weather during that time frame?
None.
So essentially the same, is that fair to say?
Yeah, it was still, the conditions were still poor.
Now, with respect to Miss Reed's vehicle, did you know what kind of vehicle Miss Reed had?
A Lexus SUV. I don't know the actual model.
Mr. Lally, that clock is actually wrong. It's just about 1 o'clock. So is this a good place to take a break?
Perfectly fine. Yeah.
All right. All right, jurors, it's the luncheon break. We'll break for an hour. We're here, ready to go, no later than 2.
Okay, let me move forward. Here we go.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. So, Mr. O'Keefe, you testifying before the luncheon recess before, you had indicated that defendant Ms. Reed had gone upstairs for some period of time. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's at your brother's house on Meadows Ave?
Correct.
And who, if anyone, had she gone upstairs with?
Her father.
About how long were they upstairs for?
10, 15 minutes.
And as far as, was there anyone else in the upstairs area of the home with them at the time that they were upstairs?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Now, as far as Ms. Reed was concerned, what, if any, conversation did you have with her while she was at the house for that period of 30 minutes or so?
None, really.
And as far as any other members of her family, without any reference to what it was, what, if any, sort of substantial conversation, what, if any, conversation did you have with either her father, her brother, or the brother's wife?
Again, none, not really. I didn't really have much interaction with any of them while they were at the house.
Now, you're obviously familiar with your brother's house on Meadows Ave, is that correct?
Yes.
And as far as the house itself, what, if any, sort of security did your brother have installed on that house on Meadows Ave?
He's gonna, excuse me, a ring. He had a ring doorbell, and then a ring camera floodlight combination above the garage doors overlooking the driveway.
And when you say the doorbell, how many sort of points of, how many doors or entrances into the house were there?
With cameras, I would say 2. I mean, the driveway and then the main front door of the house.
Can I may I approach the witness?
Yes.
These 3 photographs, exhibits 2, 3, and 4. If you could just look at those briefly and look up and finish. And generally speaking, sir, do you recognize what's depicted in those 3 photographs?
Yes. The first.
Before we get to them, just in general,
yes.
do you recognize those? Okay. And what do you recognize them in general terms? What do you recognize them to be? Photographs of?
That's my brother's house at 1 Meadows Ave in Canton.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit 2 up on the screen. So I'm going to show you that approach again. What I'm going to hand you here is the laser point. Basically, just put this button here.
Okay.
And again, sir, what's up on screen is exhibit number 2. what are we looking at here?
That's my brother's house at 1 Meadows Ave in Canton.
And as far as the Ring doorbell camera that you were referring to, is that something that's visible in this photograph?
Not in that photograph, no.
And so typically when you would come over to your brother's house, what would be sort of the general point or door that you would use to go inside the house?
So either the garage door or there's a side door right behind that bush.
So behind that bush, is there any sort of like walkway or anything like that over there?
Yeah, so there's a walkway that leads up to a couple of steps and then to the entryway.
Is that where the Ring doorbell would have been located, labeled as sort of the front door?
Yes.
And the garage area with the driveway that you were referencing in relation to this photograph is not depicted in this photograph, is that fair to say?
Correct.
So which sort of, with relation to this photograph, understanding that it's not depicted in it, where would that be?
The driveway would be to the right side of the house as we're viewing it from here.
And if I could turn your attention to the next exhibit, number 3, Ms. Gilman, if I could have that. And what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as exhibit number 3?
Correct.
And whereabouts in relation to the house, what are we looking at here?
So that would be the driveway, right side of the house, 2 garage doors, the upstairs window, and the Ring camera / floodlight combination.
Now, with respect to the garage, was there a particular way that your brother would have kept sort of the garage area?
Yeah, he had on the left side, he had a 1971 Ford LTD parked over that side. And he would typically park his car on the right side.
So the car that you were talking about before, that being the Chevy Traverse, is that correct?
Correct.
And so the floodlight combination with the camera, that you see that in this photograph, is that correct?
Yes,
If you could, just using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to that.
right under the window.
And as far as these particular Ring cameras, driveway, garage one, and the front door, the sort of side entryway there, who, if anyone, as far as you knew, had access to those particular cameras? How would they be accessed?
Most likely through the Ring app on your cell phone. And I believe the only ones who had access to was my brother and Karen Reed.
And as far as your brother,
All right, I'll strike that. See if you can lay a foundation.
as far as your brother was, what if anything would he do with reference to those Ring cameras and his app on his phone when people would arrive at his house?
I mean, a few times he talked to me through the speaker. You know, if I pulled up to the house and he wasn't home, and he would speak to me on it. But I'm not sure if I follow the entire question.
No, and that's exactly. So there were points where you would come to the house, correct, and he wasn't there,
Yes.
and he would sort of talk to you through the Ring application. Is that
Yeah.
fair to say?
Yes.
Now, as far as Ms. Reed was, when you say you believe she had access to it, what leads you to believe?
I believe the kids had mentioned it before. Kaylee and Patrick, mostly Patrick.
All right, I'm going to strike that.
Now, if I could direct your attention to the next exhibit before you, exhibit number 4. And again, sir, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as exhibit 4?
Correct.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of what part of the house we're looking at here, and what, if anything, in relation to the Ring that you observed here.
That is also the driveway from a different view. Call it the top of the driveway looking down onto the street. Right.
Just curious, why was that struck? If the kids told him directly, then it's not hearsay, right? Was that struck for hearsay? They don't say in New York courts, at least federal courts, they say they could objection, and they say why. So I'm curious. Would that, am I not understanding hearsay correctly? I need a lawyer. I need a lawyer. First, he didn't make foundation, and then he did, and then he just struck it right away. Curious what that was struck over. Anyone who's legally minded, weigh in on that. See, there's the keypad, which Innocence Fraud Watch has done a good job in her blogs of saying that, of arguing that Karen Reed changed the code on the garage door, and that she made that last phone call, that phone call where she's walking through the garage and walking into the mud room, getting out of her car. And there's like a 5-minute difference. One of the things she's doing is she changing the code on the garage so no one else could use it. But you can see the O'Keefes, I played it before, being called over by Carrie to come in the side door. They can't open it, but you can hear it open when Karen comes up to it. Punches in the code herself.
Right. In this picture here, the ring camera or the floodlight ring is not visible.
And the walkway that you were talking about that was behind the bush, do you see that in this photograph?
Yes.
If you could direct the jury's attention to where that is. So if you follow that walkway sort of around to the bush, where does that lead?
Right to the like breezeway door.
If I may approach it.
Yes.
Now, Mr. O'Keefe, the ring camera that we're talking about, have you seen those on like a disc form? Is that correct?
Have I seen them on a disc form? I'm not sure if I follow that question.
Sure. Have you viewed any ring camera footage from either the front door or the driveway to your brother's house?
No, I didn't have access.
Now, you want to maybe approach?
Yes.
All right. So the next, go right ahead.
No. Okay. So.
And let us know if you want the lights dimmed at all, Mr. Lally.
Yes, please.
Do you want that now?
Yes.
Would please? Thank you.
So, Ms. Gilman, if I could have from what's been marked as Exhibit 6, the driveway camera. If I could have video number 161. And if you could just pause that just for a moment. Now, Mr. O'Keefe, what's up on the screen there? Do you generally recognize what's depicted there?
It looks like Karen Reed's vehicle, my brother's vehicle, and it looks like another SUV behind it. I don't know who the two people.
If you could, just using the laser pointer before you, if you could just direct the jury's attention to which vehicle you're talking about when you. So starting with Ms. Reed's vehicle, where is it in this video that you observed that?
I believe it's that one right there.
And your brother's vehicle?
Is back there.
And the vehicle you're referring to as your vehicle, where is it? And if you know, when about is this video depicting in relation to what you've described as the events of January 29th?
I mean, that would be in the morning, coming back from the hospital, mid-morning.
And as far as the people within this video, do you recognize any of the people within the video?
That'd be myself. I believe that behind me could be Kerry Roberts, because I believe that's Kerry Roberts' car. She drove my father back from the hospital to One Meadows.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just run the video.
Oh, that's my mother.
Ms. Gilman, from the same exhibit, if I could have 165.
So does everybody get what just happened? They couldn't get in. They usually are used to going in through the garage door. They put in the code and garage door doesn't go up. Now watch Karen Reed's team, Karen Reed's family. Karen Reed and her father and brother come in. You can see the difference.
Again, Ms. Gilman, if you could just pause that briefly. Now, with respect to this video, do you recognize the vehicle that just pulled into the driveway here?
That looks like Karen Reed in the photo, on the video. I assume that's her father's car.
So this would have been the time that Ms. Reed, the defendant, arrived with her family from the hospital as well?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just run that through. Thank you. If I could ask for the next labeled video from Exhibit 6, number 166. Gentlemen, if I could ask you to pause there. Now, Mr. O'Keefe, with the last video, the two individuals sort of walking over to the house, do you recognize who those were?
Yeah, it appeared to be Karen Reed and her father.
And the individual who just got out of the same vehicle, do you recognize that person?
That appears to be Karen Reed's brother, Nathan.
Again, this particular day, January 29th, at your brother's house, that's the first time that you met him, is that correct?
Correct.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just play this one here. Thank you. Ms. Gilman, from the same exhibit number 6, if I could have video 169. Just there for a moment, please. Now, as far as you mentioned earlier in your testimony that after Ms. Reed arrived at the house, that your nephew Patrick came home as well?
Correct.
And do you see your nephew Patrick in this video up on the screen now?
Yes.
So this would depict when he got dropped off, essentially.
Correct.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just run that, please. Ms. Gilman, from the same exhibit 6, if I could have number 176. Pause that right there, please. Now, from this video, you referenced earlier in your testimony, Ms. Reed had gathered some belongings and then had left with all of the vehicles that her family came with, correct?
Correct.
And do you recognize anyone depicted in this video number 176?
That's Karen Reed.
And what, if anything, do you observe in this video her to have in her hand at this time?
Looks like some type of a bag.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just play this one, please. Now, Ms. Gilman, if I could have from the same Exhibit 6, number 178. I could ask you to just pause right there. Now, Mr. O'Keefe, you were at your brother's house on Meadows Ave for a majority of that day, correct?
Yes.
About how long were you there into the evening?
Yes.
And at some point were attempts made in and around your brother's house, the driveway, the walkway, things of that nature, as far as snow removal was concerned?
At one point, other than me shoveling, Patrick's friend's father came with a snowblower.
And so initially it was you shoveling, what if anything was your father doing while you were shoveling as well?
It was just me shoveling.
And do you recognize what's depicted up in this video as far as any individuals in this video?
I believe that is me standing there with the shovel.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just play this. Ms. Gilman, from that same Exhibit 6, could I have video number 185? Ms. Gilman, if you could just pause it right there. Now, in reference to the snowblower coming out, or sort of the friend of Patrick, father of Patrick's friends, do you recognize anybody in this video here?
I'm assuming that's the father of Patrick's friend, but I'm not sure.
So fair to say this was later in the day after you were out there shoveling and after the defendant had left the house, is that correct?
Yes.
And with regard to that particular day of January 29th, do you recall any law enforcement, whether they PD or state police, coming to the house while you were there that day?
Not on the 29th, no.
During the course of clearing the driveway out as far as snow or ice, what, if anything, did you observe as far as beyond just sort of snow and ice? Were there any sort of other items within the driveway that you recall seeing, or?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just play this video. Thank you. And lastly, from this exhibit, Ms. Gilman, if you could, from Exhibit 6, pull up video number 239. Mr. O'Keefe, what's up on the screen right now, is that essentially what the driveway looked like at the end of sort of the snow blowing and the shoveling and snow removal that day?
Yes.
And that vehicle towards the top, that's your vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
And is this around the time that you would have been leaving your brother's house on January 29th?
Yes.
Ms. Courthouse, we can have the lights back up. Thank you.
Just to answer your question, I just saw a question about the ring witness in the chat. This is something that Hank Brennan asked for mid-trial, maybe like a week or two ago is my memory of it, that someone go over the Ring camera. I would think that they would have, I would think, but maybe the defense stipulated to it. I don't know. I would think that they would come in and testify and say, look, we see a deletion on the app here and here and here. That's what I would think. I don't think we're ever going to see those deleted Ring videos. But that's what I thought they were coming in for. They may be coming in for another reason. But maybe the defense stipulated, maybe Judge Canoni said no. I don't know. I keep hearing Dr. Welsher. Is that right? Do I have his name right? It's the last witness. So we have one more witness for the Commonwealth, and then it goes into the defense's case. And like I said yesterday, I was talking to my girlfriend, and she's like, I don't know how they're going to bring Marie Russell in. I mean, she's just going to get eaten alive by Hank Brennan. We've already seen it. And I said, I don't know. I think it's quantity, just another. I mean, as Karen Reed said when she added Victoria George, the former juror. I mean, she never got to deliberate, but she was a lawyer, civil lawyer. She's a civil lawyer, out of work civil lawyer. And she came the first week or two of the trial. Then we never saw her again. She was really, you can see her staring down the jury and taking notes. She made the jury uncomfortable. I don't know. I would think that she was discarded by Karen Reed. They used her to get once there was a gag on the lawyers, on all the lawyers, not just the defense lawyers in this case, but all the lawyers. It was way too late. Like, why didn't Judge Canoni do that years ago when she saw the way this is going? She let this nonsense, and then not to allow Karen Reed's own statements in the first trial. That is something. So Adam Lally asked for any of the interviews, statements that she had given to come into the first trial, and she wouldn't allow it. For what reason? I mean, it just seems contradictory. I mean, if you're not going to put a gag order and let the client knows her right, she knows any of these statements can be used against her, then to say, no, I'm just going to protect Karen Reed. What, because they're too prejudicial? I don't know on what grounds she decided not to let them in. It was bizarre. We just had these like odd, bizarre rulings. So this time they're coming in, but no more buffer zone. Like right when, and that's going to be right when, so we could have free Karen Reed people chanting in the zone, really causing a disturbance when jurors are deliberating. I mean, this is just wild. Wild. So we're near the end of his testimony.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Recognize that?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit 101. And Ms. Gilman, if you could just enlarge that a little. Thank you very much. And what's up on the screen, Mr. O'Keefe? Is that what you have before you as exhibit number 1?
Yes.
And what are we looking at in this exhibit?
That's my brother.
And as far as your earlier testimony in regard to the vehicle that he kept sort of on the left side of the garage, what, if anything, do you recognize?
It's depicted in the picture. It's a convertible 1971 Ford LTD.
And with reference to that vehicle, how did your brother feel about that vehicle?
He enjoyed it. He thought it was fun driving around, in a convertible. Nephew Patrick enjoyed, being driven to baseball games and whatnot in it. So.
And your niece, Kaylee, how did she feel about it?
She did not like it. Still doesn't.
Thank you, sir. May I approach this procedure? I have nothing further.
All right.
Mr.
Interesting.
O'Keefe, sir, I have no questions for you.
Interesting to end on, right? I mean, that really, that's very, this is why I say Adam Lally is a better lawyer than he's really given credit for. So he's not a performer. He's not dramatic. But what an interesting question. So he must have known the niece didn't like it. And what an interesting way to humanize John O'Keefe and give you a real sense of sort of the dynamics. I mean, it's relatable. It's so relatable. No? Clever way to get your point across. So if we're headed into, if we get another hung jury, I'm not saying we will. If we get another hung jury in this case, I think it, might prove my point about Adam Lally, certainly. That he was up against, him and Laura McLaughlin were up against, overworked, outspent, had a giant innocence fraud campaign, a judge against them, going against them every single ruling. And he didn't get a win, but he didn't get a loss. I mean, it's really kind of I think it's an accomplishment. He had to put up witnesses not knowing how they would be on the stand. He didn't know Trooper Paul was going to be extremely nervous on the stand. He didn't have all these benefits that Hank Brennan had to kind of edit the trial and, find out who the really strong witnesses are. You don't know who's going to be a strong witness until you put them in the chair. So here is Peggy O'Keefe's. This is just a very short testimony. And my question is, was this a better move to have Peggy O'Keefe testify rather than Paul O'Keefe? And we saw a lot more with Paul O'Keefe's testimony, all those videos.
No, Mrs. O'Keefe. Yeah. All right, Mr. Brennan, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mrs. O'Keefe.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brennan.
Could you kindly introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Margaret O'Keefe. I am John O'Keefe's mother.
I love that the free Karen readers are like, Margaret O'Keefe, who is she? Never heard of her. They didn't know it was Peggy. They couldn't figure out that Peggy was short for Margaret. Myrna, Sultana, thanks for the super sticker. Appreciate it. Tanya Vincent, has Karen Reed ever gotten in trouble for all her faces in court? Not that I don't, nor giving the finger, nor any of it. The only time, there's two times that I recall. One time when Hank Brennan said to her, something like, this isn't a laughing matter. And then the judge said to her, something funny, Miss Reed, something like that. But no, she's never gotten in trouble with any of her behavior, real trouble. That's why I say that I think William Reed, call him Daddy Reed, just a shorthand. The fact that he has a court officer sitting next to him this entire trial, I think he must have done something, it must have been a result of something very disruptive, more disruptive than winking at a juror or staring down the jury. I mean, we heard that she had to clear out the courthouse, that they were having words with the O'Keefe family. Karen Reed and her family were saying things, aggressive things to the O'Keefe family. That was what was reported. I don't know if I say this all take this with a pinch of salt. But we also got reports that William Reed was screaming at Alan Jackson to bring Jennifer McCabe down to her knees like you said you were. And that, I think the jury might have possibly heard that. Maybe. Just really, and I've heard from some very good sources that was true. And that after that, we had, after that incident, he's had a court officer next to him. And every time the jury gets up, she guards the jury from him. So I think it's funny when he gives an interview saying, like, I know how to behave. Of course, I went and consoled them. And they were, I'm very sensitive, when all the Reeds have done is take care of themselves and not been sensitive to anyone else's feelings. Try to play this out in the court of public opinion, have no respect for the court, no respect for the O'Keefes. Karen Reed and her lawyers have mounted a witness harassment campaign with the help of blogger Aidan Carney. I mean, couldn't it have made this more difficult for the O'Keefe family? And I'm going to play an interview at the end of Peggy O'Keefe's testimony that you're not going to believe with William Reed, the callousness of it. So back to Peggy O'Keefe's testimony. Here we go.
Are you married?
Yes,
Who are you married to?
John O'Keefe Jr.
How long have you been married for?
Too long. 53 years.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't hear you.
53. Long enough?
How long have you lived in the area?
We moved to Canton 3 years ago.
Before you moved to Canton 3 years ago, where did you live?
Braintree.
How long had you lived in Braintree for?
50 years?
Did you begin your family in Braintree?
No, we lived in Mattapan first, and that's where my daughter was born. And then we moved to Braintree.
Your daughter was born when you were in Mattapan?
Mm-hmm.
Your daughter's name?
Kristen.
How many children did you have?
3.
You, Kristen and John?
And Paul.
Is Paul the youngest, the baby?
The baby.
Did you raise your children? How long were you in Mattapan before you moved closer to here?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
How long did you live in Mattapan before you moved closer?
2 years.
And then the rest of the time you were in the area?
In Braintree.
And tell me a little bit about your immediate family.
My daughter. My daughter Kristen had a tumor, a cancerous tumor that she had for 5 months. And she died in November at 13. She had 2 children. And then 2 months after she passed, her husband passed from a heart attack. And then you all know about Joan. And then my son Paul is over there.
That was 2013, ma'am. Could I ask you about her children?
She had 2 children, Kaylee, who's now 17, and Patrick is 14. And he's a run for my money.
Do you remember how old the children were when your daughter passed?
3 and 6.
When that happened, was there any plan for the children?
As far as?
Or what was going to happen with the children?
When she passed?
Yes, ma'am.
And when he passed?
Yes, ma'am.
My son decided to be the head guardian. And then we had, I was the other guardian, and there was Steve's brother and sister with the other 2 guardians. So there's 4 of us.
May I approach you to adjust the microphone?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Talking too soft? Okay.
Did I understand that there was a decision that John would be the primary guardian? Can you share with us how that decision came about?
Well, he was single. The other two guardians were married, and they didn't have children, but he decided to do it himself. And then I was the second one in case he needed me. So I was over there most of the time, like when the kids get home from school or, take them places, and then have them on weekends so he could have a break. So that's what I did.
Did other people help out in addition to you and John?
Yes, my husband was there, and Paul and Erin were there, and the other members of Steve's family.
I understand at some point John worked in law enforcement.
Yes.
Besides that, could you just share just a little bit about him with us?
He was a police officer at headquarters. And when he first started, he was in Hyde Park, and then he moved to Dorchester, and then into Boston itself, and that's what he did.
I was hoping if you could tell us a little bit about John besides his work.
He was enthusiastic with sports. He was wonderful with the kids. He took care of them and did everything for them. Take them places on vacations and everything. He was their number one, and they called him JJ.
Would you mind if I showed you a photograph?
No.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you a photograph.
Okay.
And could you tell us what you see?
That's my son.
Thank you. May I introduce this as an exhibit?
Yes.
Exhibit 16.
Thank you. With the court's permission, I'd like to publish.
Yes.
Ms. O'Keefe, do you know when this picture was taken?
Oh, I really don't know. It was in the summer of I don't know what year. I really don't know the year. But is that one he probably took him to a fair or an amusement park, and he had his picture taken there with it, and then the kids were with him too. So,
do you know how old he was in that picture?
43, maybe.
Okay. What year was John born?
75.
Ms. Gilman, could you take the photo down, please? How old was John when he passed?
45. My mind's not working right now.
I understand. It's okay. Can I ask you a few more questions? Okay. You let me know. I want to go back to the morning of January 29th, 2022. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Were you home?
I was home in Braintree.
In Braintree.
Mm-hmm.
Who were you with?
My husband.
Did you receive a phone call?
Yes, from Carrie Roberts. It was about 6:15, between 6:15 and 6:30 in the morning.
Did you know Carrie Roberts?
Yes.
How did you know her?
She lived in Braintree for a while. John and her were friends. They went to the junior prom together. And then we found out that she moved. She lived in Canton, and she was around the corner from us, and she helped us out with the kids.
And when you were helping take care of the kids, would you often...
So do I have it right that if he was born in 1975, for some reason I think his birthday was in December, that he would have been 49 when he died? No. I have that wrong. My math is really something. Someone else did. He died in January 2022.
See Miss Roberts?
Yeah, because she'd take Patrick and her son Ryan places. And yeah, so I saw her all the time.
Often?
Yeah.
When she called you that morning, do you remember the conversation?
Yeah, she said John was found in a snowbank. And I didn't understand, which I said, what do you mean found in a snowbank? She's like, found him in the snow. They don't know what happened. She says he's brought up to the Good Samaritan Hospital. So she says, I'm going to come get you and Papa because I don't want you driving. I says, we can drive there. We both have four-wheel drives. She says, no, I'm coming. So she came to get us. And it took a while to get there because the snow was bad. And in the meantime, I had called one of my nieces to find out because one of my other nieces worked at Good Samaritan. And I just wanted to know if she could find
46. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is that right? He'd be 49 now, right? Yeah, I was doing it by 2025. Yeah. Thank you.
Find out anything about it. I just couldn't get a hold of her. So when we get up there, they told us to sit in this room and they would bring us down shortly. So finally they said, okay, you can go down. So we started walking down the corridor. And as I'm walking down, I hear Karen Reed yell, Peg, is he dead? Is he dead, Peg? Peg, is he dead? And I just kept walking. And then I asked, I don't know who it was, a nurse or a worker at the hospital. And I said, what is she doing here? And she says, oh, she's being psych evaluated. So then they brought us down to the room where my son was. He's bruised up. His eyes were closed. It's just not a good scene.
Okay. I'd like to go back, if I may.
Okay.
May I?
Yeah.
When Kerry Roberts picked you up in the car, did anybody go with you and Miss Roberts on the drive from your home in Braintree to Good Samaritan Hospital?
No, we were the only three in the car.
Who was the third person?
My husband.
During the drive to Good Samaritan Hospital that morning,
Yep.
did you ever have a chance while you were in the car to speak to the defendant?
Yes.
Please tell the jury about that conversation.
She, I asked her what happened, and she said, we went to a party. I left him there. I said, you just left him there? She said, yes, I just left him there.
Did she say whether she left him inside or outside?
No, she just said, I left him there.
Did she tell you whether or not she left him in the driveway or the street?
She just said, no, I just left him there.
You told us that when you got into Good Samaritan Hospital, you were walking down the hallway and you had another interaction with the defendant.
Yes.
This testimony is always so chilling to me. Because Karen Reed really did just leave him there after hitting him. So, like, I just dropped him off at a party and then I ran him over and left him there. I mean, yeah.
And you told us that she was asking if he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe a little bit where in the hospital you had this interaction with her?
when they took us down to the emergency room, the doors open, and there was a corridor to go down to the other rooms, and she was on the left-hand side, and that's when she saw me come in, and that's when she started yelling, "Is he dead, Peg? Is he dead, Peg?"
So when she was yelling, could you describe her mood or demeanor? Was she animated?
She's loud, and I don't know. She was just loud, and
Yeah, not complimentary. So isn't it interesting that Paul O'Keefe's testimony is that Karen Reed said, "Was he alive? Is he alive?" And Paul O'Keefe had a much better view of Karen Reed. And Peggy O'Keefe remembers, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" Which is more in line with what the witnesses said in what Carrie Roberts and Jen McCabe was saying. Is he dead? Is he dead? He's dead. Those kind of things. It's more in line with what we've heard from other witnesses.
as she was saying it.
And when she was asking you, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" Did you again ask her a question?
I just asked the nurse, "What is she doing here?"
And did you speak to Miss Reed herself?
No. No.
At some point, and you and your husband got to see John?
Yes.
And were you with Kerry at some point?
Kerry was there, and then my son Paul was there.
How did you get home?
I think I went home with Paul, and I think my husband went home with Kerry. We went back to Canton at the time.
Do you remember generally the time frame? Was it morning, afternoon, evening?
No, it was morning.
Do you remember getting home that day?
Yeah. It was snowy, icy.
Was anybody home when you got back?
No, it was just us. And then the kids started coming home. And that's when I was trying to, take care of them. And then there was a knock at the door. And it was Karen, her father, and her brother asked if they could come in. And I was just trying to calm the kids because Patrick was just out of control, yelling. And then they came in. And then he said, "Do you mind if we go upstairs and get a couple of her things?" Which I never should have let them go up there. But at the time, I just couldn't think straight. And I really didn't have anybody else to help me keep them down in the kitchen. So I don't know what they got up there, what they did up there.
How long were they, when you say upstairs, do you know what room they went to?
I assumed the bedroom.
So I'm going to strike that, Mrs. O'Keefe. If you could just what you actually know, okay? And Mr. Brennan can ask a better question.
Thank you. Could I lead a bit?
Yes.
Ma'am, how many rooms are upstairs in John's home?
1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms and an office. And off the master bedroom, there's a bathroom, and then there's a closet. It's a big house.
Did you see the defendant and her father go upstairs?
I didn't really see them go up, but I knew they were up there because I could hear them.
You didn't follow them up or go to look?
No.
You didn't know which room or rooms they were in?
No, I'm assuming the bathroom and the master bedroom.
My question was poor. You didn't see which rooms they actually went in?
No.
How long was the defendant upstairs in John's home with her father?
I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Did you see them come back down?
No, I did not.
When they were upstairs, what were you doing?
I was trying to calm the kids.
Both of them?
But yeah, well, mainly Patrick.
How was Patrick reacting?
He was very upset once we told him because he slept over a friend's house the night before. And he just said, "I'll never see him again." Sorry.
Would you like a moment?
Mrs. O'Keefe, would you like to take a short break?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
You can just let me know when you're ready. Take your time.
Okay, go ahead.
You ready?
Go ahead.
Okay. That morning, when the defendant and her father came into your home, did you personally interact with the defendant?
No.
Was there any hugs, condolences?
No.
Did you ever confront the defendant with any accusations when she was in your home that morning?
I don't even remember her being in the house. When she went upstairs, that's the last I saw of her.
Did you ever lean over a kitchen island? Do you have a kitchen island in your house?
No.
Did you ever lean over the kitchen island and say, I think he looks like he got hit by a car?
No. I don't remember talking to her that morning.
Did you see when she left?
Nope.
Did you ever see her Lexus in the driveway?
No.
The children, who's their guardian and custodian now?
Well, there's still 4 of us. 4 of us.
Where do they live?
One in Boston, one in Stoughton, and Paul's in Bridgewater, and me.
Where do the children live?
With me. In Canton.
They live with you full time?
Yes.
You're their primary caretaker?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, just
Who are you married to?
Well, sorry. This makes me so enraged, this moment at the end of Peggy O'Keefe's testimony with Alan Jackson saying, I'm sorry for your loss. It's just awful. They have to huddle. And now Alan Jackson trying to win points with the jury with his fake sincerity.
Okay.
I hate the way he buttons his coat every time he gets up to the podium. Just everything about him irks me. I loathe him.
Mrs. O'Keefe, I'm very, very sorry for your loss. I have no questions for you.
All right, Mrs. O'Keefe, you're all.
What a thing to be put through. What an awful thing. I'm sorry, Mrs. O'Keefe. I'm going to take this opportunity. I've been in the courtroom with you for, 2 years now? I've never said this to your face, but since I'm in front of the jury now, I'm going to say it to you. Sorry for your loss. I'm so sympathetic. I'm not going to cross-examine you. It's not because I don't think I could score any points. And everything you said was the truth. Here's William Reed. Speaking of disgusting.
Any reaction today, too? Quick comment about today, Bill. I thought it was a good day for the defense. You saw the cross-examinations yourself. Looks like the beat continues. We've got a fabulous team. We've got a command of all of the evidence now from grand juries, prior testimony. You just hear there's so much lack of consistency. Just feel so.
Right. If they had, you don't want your witnesses to be You want there to be minute differences. It's not the way human beings work. You asked me to tell the story, of what I did today. It would be different today than it would be if you asked me tomorrow. It's the way human beings work. But they're going to try to be like, well, every point to the letter. If their testimony was entirely, there wasn't one inconsistency, they would all say that they planned and strategized their testimony. I mean, to go to Carrie Roberts, just a reminder that the 227, this fake news put out by Karen Reed's legal team and Karen Reed herself via Aidan Carney, etc., that Jen McCabe Googled at 2:27 in the morning, house long to die in the cold. When it was done, 6:23 and 6:24 the next morning, at Karen Reed's request. That wasn't a thing when Carrie Roberts testified at the grand jury. So it wouldn't be a detail that she would tell the grand jury.
So strong about it. Our daughter. Such an amazing, talented team, these lawyers.
You think you'll be called to the stand?
I hope so.
Do you know when?
Mr. Reed, have you been told when?
No, I have not.
Does the statement of Gretchen Voss about the broken taillight bother you?
Nothing bothers me. I know the truth. I was there. I was in the O'Keefe house that day. I know why we went back.
Right. I know why we went by to get the murder weapon. No, it doesn't bother me that my daughter's a cop killer, unrepentant, murdering psychopath, because I'm one too. I haven't committed murder yet that we know of, but we're cut from the same cloth, so it doesn't bother me at all. I'm just as sadistic and cruel as my daughter, and narcissistic.
I know what we did when we went there. I know how long we were upstairs. I know it all. And I don't lie. At my age, I answer to another maker.
Did you delete any ring video?
Listening to the testimony from Mrs. O'Keefe.
So just to curious, the statement analysis always say that when you bring in God, it's a sign of deception. They flag it for deception. He's bringing in God. He doesn't lie. I wouldn't lie. I definitely wouldn't lie like I have to the press over and over again to save my murderous daughter.
Listen, I want my daughter back. We want our daughter back. So I'm very sensitive to the pain the O'Keefes have suffered. I knew John O'Keefe well. I've been in his company several times. I've been in.
Right, here it is. So they want their daughter back. They still have their daughter. She goes to prison, they still have their daughter. John O'Keefe is murdered, gone, thanks to your daughter's actions. How dare he say that he wants his daughter back? And then he goes on to say he's very sensitive to the O'Keefe family. Oh.
Ball fields when his nephew was playing ball. So, I know how much he was doing that guardianship of those kids. And I admired that incredibly. And so did our daughter. So, it's not.
What are you going to say? That it's hard on you too, that you miss John O'Keefe? Is that what you're saying? That you admired him and it's hard to, I mean, he's not even going that far. They want their daughter back? Look, not even a follow-up question. They say nothing. Excuse me, Mr. Reed, you have your daughter. John O'Keefe's been murdered. And you're the one, and it's your daughter. The only one who's ever been blamed in this is your daughter. Seems like, and you did a lot to cover up your daughter's crime. Dean Walker, thanks so much for the super sticker. I appreciate it. Thanks for supporting the live streams.
Not lost on us that the O'Keefe family has endured tremendous pain. You can't help but see what you saw today and hear it and not be empathized by it. I'm certainly, all right, sympathetic to that. I just give her a space. Karen Reed is innocent.
Give her space. That's what you do when you empathize. And be empathized by it. When you're empathized by it, you have to give people their space. Unreal. Unreal.
She's not responsible. There was no collision. None. And it'll be proven.
Oh, now he's echoing Alan Jackson. Just keep saying it. Just keep gaslighting the public. What about her broken taillight? Where did she do that? Why are there any pieces of taillight on John O'Keefe's driveway if that's where she broke it? What do you ever think how unlucky your daughter is? That the day she's accused of murdering her boyfriend with her car by clipping him with her car, leaving him to die in a blizzard, alone in a blizzard, that same day that she strangely looks like reverses right into her car, reverses in a way that she never does before in that same driveway, right into her boyfriend's car, almost like she's love tapping it on camera, making her own evidence. Isn't that odd? None of these questions the press won't ask William Reed.
And when you hear the testimony of any of these witnesses from the state, you see how they're buckling.
Mr. Reed, when you were upstairs with the O'Keefes, did you delete any ring video?
Of course not. I wouldn't know how. Of course not.
He just about does it.
He wouldn't know how. He's too old. He doesn't know how to work an app. I still don't think he did it, but I don't think I think he would find out how. I mean, this guy was a professor. He's not some neo-Luddite. He was working up to the moment, Karen Reed killed John O'Keefe. He's not some neo-Luddite. Doesn't know how to work technology. Look at that duper-Stellite. Maybe he is the one who, I don't know. Maybe now I'm looking at that duper-Stellite. I think it's Karen Reed, though, who did it. She seemed awfully involved with that ring video and making evidence for herself. I wish, I'm disappointed that Natalie Bernschneider-Wawicki isn't being called to the stand. Bill Reed isn't being called to the stand. That Karen Reed's witness harassment campaign isn't coming into this. I really had high hopes, certainly by all those hearings. Hank Brennan got our hopes up, no? I don't know.
This fall, serious. Did you get a look at when you looked at the jury at all compared to last time to this time? You notice anything different, or do you think that they look like they're they're listening closer? What's the difference, I guess, this time?
Different faces, different, that's all. But I think they're all purposeful, well intended, and it's difficult sitting. It's difficult for me sitting there, So they're doing this, good citizenship duties, and I respect that. So
there were a couple times you were shaking your head during court today. Testimony. What's going through your head?
What's going through my head is that I'm into the fourth year of this, and I would believe that, as part of a rhetorical series of questions, how many DAs would you know that after getting a Fed dump with the text of the leading detective who has been summarily fired, and with the ARCA testimony, would at that point, just a rhetorical question, say, we're not going any further. And then on March 19th, when that lead detective is dishonorably discharged, how many DAs, you're all reporters, would at that point say, we're walking away?
A lot wouldn't walk away, William Reed, with the evidence against your daughter. And ARCA, the whole federal investigation was a farce brought on by David Yannetti and your daughter. It's a farce. ARCA has zero credibility. They said they would not change their opinion had they have more evidence from the Commonwealth. They only took it from the feds, this tiny little bit of evidence. Having more evidence wouldn't change their opinion. We've seen their text messages. We heard how they were talking on an encrypted app. They're criminals themselves. Enough. The press never asks the right questions. They don't ask the important questions. They're part of the fraud. Enough with this. I mean, seriously. You have an opportunity to interview this guy? And you don't press him? You don't ask that second question, that all-important second question? Really? Hey, Heisenberg, what's up? Roberta, voicemail 8 could be the clue against Karen Reed. What is voicemail 8? Fill me in, and thank you. Fill me in. What is voicemail 8? I'll hang around. I'll wait till you guys catch up with the delay. Yeah, there's so many of them. I mean, just think of this: if Karen Reed were a man who clipped his girlfriend and left her to die alone in the blizzard, and then started saying, "I hate you, you bitch," we'd all be looking at this in the terms of a domestic violence, relationship violence lens. Everybody would get what it was about. The same facts in the sexes were reversed. Oh, you'll explain on another show. I'll go look myself. But everybody would get that this was part of, relationship violence. I want to thank some people to thank before I go. Let me see if I can do it. One second. I want to thank Anna Quint, Cynthia Kelly, Marcie Denton. Thank you for supporting the show via Venmo. Great way to support the show. All of these are really, you make these happen. These are listener-supported shows. Great way to support the show. Send a donation via Venmo. Buy me a coffee. Best bang for your buck. Also, Patreon. Get access to content you won't find anywhere else on my Patreon. Links are all in the description of this episode. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great long weekend, guys. I'll be back hopefully tomorrow, maybe Monday morning. We'll see how it goes. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for listening with me.
I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment. I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system I clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, Jen, like John, you were my mark. My innocence fraud campaign is my biggest hit. was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system I clown.